The first time my mother-in-law asked me why I kept avoiding her, it wasn't in anger. It was in that quiet, wounded way that makes your chest tighten before you even understand why. We were standing in the kitchen after dinner, the house filled with the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint laughter of my wife in the living room. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes carried something heavier. "Why do you keep avoiding me?" she asked. I froze. My hands were damp against the glass I was holding. I could have lied. I could have smiled and brushed it off like I always did. But something inside me snapped, not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion. "Because looking at you hurts," I whispered. The words hung in the air like smoke. Her face went pale. For a second, I thought she might cry or shout. Instead, she simply stared at me, as if I'd opened a door she hadn't known existed. That moment was the beginning of everything unraveling, and everything healing. Because the truth was, I wasn't avoiding her out of dislike. I was avoiding her because she reminded me of the life I was terrified of losing. From the day I married my wife, Aisha, her mother had been kind. Almost too kind. She welcomed me into their family like I had always belonged there. She cooked my favorite meals without asking, remembered small details about my childhood stories, and treated me with a warmth I wasn't used to. But kindness can be painful when you don't feel you deserve it. And every time I saw her, it felt like staring into a mirror of the future. Her mother was the kind of woman who had lived through storms. She had raised her daughter after losing her husband too young. She carried grief like an old scar, faded, but always there. Yet she still smiled. Still loved. Still kept going. And that terrified me. Because lately, I had been drowning in my own quiet storm. Aisha and I had been struggling. Not in the dramatic, shouting way people imagine marriage problems. No, ours was the slow kind. The kind where silence grows longer, where smiles feel thinner, where you sit beside each other and feel miles apart. It started with work stress, then bills, then small misunderstandings. I thought I was protecting her by keeping my worries inside. She thought I was shutting her out. We stopped talking about the deeper things, and suddenly, the person I loved most felt like a stranger sharing my home. And her mother, she noticed. She noticed the way I left rooms when she entered. The way I avoided eye contact. The way my laughter had disappeared. She noticed because she had seen this kind of pain before. After that night in the kitchen, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside my wife, listening to her breathing, wondering how we had come to this. Wondering how love could feel so heavy. The next morning, I found my mother-in-law sitting on the porch, a cup of tea in her hands. The air was cool, the sky still pale. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "When you said it hurts to look at me," she began softly, "I wanted to be angry. But then I realized, pain doesn't come from nowhere." I sat down slowly, my throat tight. She turned to me then, her eyes calm but piercing. "Tell me what you're carrying." I wanted to run. That was my instinct. Avoid, escape, bury everything deeper. But something about her voice, steady, patient, made it impossible. So I told her. I told her about the distance between Aisha and me. About how I felt like I was failing as a husband. About the fear that one day she would look at me and realize she deserved someone better. About the nights I lay awake imagining our marriage quietly falling apart. And then, the truth I hadn't admitted even to myself. "I'm scared," I whispered. "Because you survived losing someone you loved. And you still stand here. And I keep thinking, what if I lose her too? What if I end up like that? What if love always ends in pain?" Her face softened, and for the first time, I saw tears shine in her eyes. "Oh, son," she murmured. "You think I'm a reminder of loss. But I'm also proof of something else." I frowned. She placed her cup down carefully. I am proof that love is worth it. Even when it breaks you. Even when it hurts. Because the pain isn't the end of the story. Her words hit me like a wave. I had been so focused on fear that I forgot love was never meant to be safe. It was meant to be real. She leaned closer. You're avoiding me because you're afraid of becoming me. But listen, you don't become strong by avoiding pain. You become strong by facing it with the people you love. That afternoon, she asked me to do something I hadn't done in months. Talk to my daughter, she said. Not as a husband trying to fix things. As a man who loves her and is afraid. That night, I sat with Aisha at the dining table. The house was quiet. My hands trembled slightly. She looked tired. Not just physically, but emotionally. Like someone waiting for something to change or finally break. I need to tell you something, I began. She didn't speak, only nodded. I've been shutting down, I admitted. Not because I don't love you. But because I'm scared. Scared of failing you. Scared of losing you. And instead of holding you closer, I've been pushing you away. Her eyes filled instantly. Do you know how lonely that feels? She whispered. To be right next to someone and still feel abandoned? The guilt in my chest was sharp. I'm sorry, I said, voice breaking. I thought I was protecting you from my stress. But I was only protecting myself from being vulnerable. She wiped her cheeks, shaking her head. I didn't need you to be perfect, she said. I needed you to be here. Silence stretched between us, heavy but honest. Then she reached across the table, her fingers trembling as they touched mine. I miss you, she whispered. That was it. That was the crack in the wall we'd built. I held her hand tightly, like it was the first time. I miss you too. Over the next weeks, things didn't magically become perfect. Healing isn't a movie montage. It's slow. It's awkward conversations. It's learning each other again. It's apologizing more than once. It's choosing love even when pride wants distance. And through it all, her mother was quietly there, not interfering, not judging, just supporting. One evening, months later, I found myself laughing with Aisha in the kitchen while her mother cooked beside us. The warmth in the room felt different now. Real. Her mother glanced at me, a small smile on her lips. You're not avoiding me anymore, she teased gently. I chuckled, shaking my head. No, I admitted. Because looking at you doesn't hurt the same way. She raised an eyebrow. And what does it feel like now? I thought for a moment. It feels like hope, I said. Because you remind me that even after loss, love still matters. That pain doesn't erase what's beautiful. Her eyes shimmered. That's all I ever wanted you to see. That night, as I lay beside my wife, I realized something profound. Avoiding people doesn't save you from pain. It only saves you from healing. And sometimes, the people who hurt to look at are the very ones showing you the way forward. Because love will always carry risk. But it will also always carry meaning. And in the end, the strongest marriages aren't the ones that never break. They're the ones that choose, again and again, to mend. The next morning felt different, not because the problems were gone, but because something had finally been spoken aloud. The truth has a strange way of changing the air in a house. It doesn't fix everything instantly, but it stops the slow suffocation of silence. I woke up before Aisha. The room was still dim, the curtains barely letting in the pale light of dawn. I watched her sleeping, her face softer than it had been in weeks, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was standing at the edge of losing her. I felt like I was standing at the beginning of fighting for her. But healing is never a straight road. It's full of hesitation, old habits, and fear creeping back in when you least expect it. Later that day, her mother invited me to accompany her to the market. It was such a simple request, the kind of ordinary thing families do without thinking. Yet for me, it felt like a test. We walked side by side through the busy streets. The sounds of vendors calling out prices, the smell of fresh spices and warm bread, the chatter of strangers, all of it felt strangely comforting. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, "When my husband died, I thought my life was over." I glanced at her, startled by the sudden honesty. "I was young," she continued. "I had a child to raise. People told me I would move on, that time would heal me. But they didn't understand, it wasn't time that healed me." "What was it?" I asked, my voice low. She stopped walking for a moment, turning to face me. "It was love," she said. "Not romantic love. Love in all its forms. The love I had for my daughter. The love my friends showed me. Even the love I had to learn to give myself." Her words settled deep in my chest. She resumed walking, her pace slow. "You're afraid of pain," she said gently. "But pain is not proof that love is failing. Pain is proof that love is real." I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. That evening, Aisha and I sat together again. Not because we had planned some dramatic heart-to-heart, but because we were finally trying. She poured tea, her hands careful, almost nervous. "I don't know how we got so far," she admitted softly, staring into her cup. I exhaled. "I think, we stopped being honest," I said. "We thought silence would keep the peace, but it only built walls." She nodded slowly, tears gathering again. "I was starting to think you didn't need me anymore," she whispered. "Or worse, that you didn't want me." The pain in her voice was unbearable. "I always wanted you," I said immediately, leaning closer. "I just didn't know how to show up when I felt like I was falling apart." For the first time, she didn't look away. She let me see her hurt fully, and in doing so, she let me see her love too. "I don't want a perfect husband," she said. "I want you. The real you. Even when you're scared." Those words cracked something open inside me. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. Her fingers curled into mine like they had been waiting. In the days that followed, we began doing small things differently. We talked more. Not just about bills or schedules, but about feelings. About fears. About dreams we had forgotten we once shared. One night, we went for a walk under the quiet sky. The air was cool, the streetlights casting soft shadows. Aisha suddenly stopped and looked at me. "Do you think we can really come back from this?" she asked. I didn't answer quickly, because she deserved honesty. "I think," I said slowly, "that love doesn't disappear. It just gets buried under everything we don't say. And if we keep digging, we'll find it again." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't only sadness. She smiled faintly. "I want to dig," she whispered. Weeks passed, and slowly, the house felt warmer again. Laughter returned in small moments, over burnt toast, over silly jokes, over memories we hadn't spoken of in too long. One evening, her mother joined us for dinner. The atmosphere was lighter, almost peaceful. Halfway through the meal, she looked at me with quiet curiosity. "So," she said, "does it still hurt to look at me?" The table went still. Aisha glanced between us, confused. I smiled, feeling emotion rise in my chest. "No," I said softly. "Not anymore." Her mother tilted her head. "And why is that?" I looked at Aisha, then back at her. "Because now, when I look at you, I don't just see loss. I see strength. I see survival. I see the proof that love can endure even the hardest storms." Her eyes shimmered, and she nodded once, as if she had been waiting for that answer. Aisha's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. And in that moment, I realized something. Avoiding pain doesn't protect love. Facing it together does. That night, as I lay beside my wife, I understood the lesson her mother had been trying to teach me all along. Love will hurt sometimes. But it will also heal. And the greatest courage isn't in running away from what hurts. It's in staying, holding on, and choosing love anyway. The real test didn't come during the quiet dinners or the gentle conversations. It didn't come in the soft moments when love felt easy again. It came unexpectedly, the way life always does, when you start believing the storm has passed. It was a rainy evening when Aisha received the call. I was in the living room, half watching the television, half lost in my thoughts, when her phone rang. She answered casually at first, but within seconds, her face changed. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hand flew silence over her mouth. Aisha? I stood up immediately. She didn't respond. Her eyes widened, trembling. Then she whispered, barely audible. Ami, she collapsed. My heart stopped. We rushed out into the night, rain pouring like the sky was breaking open. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Aisha sat beside me, her hands shaking uncontrollably, tears slipping down her face. No, she kept whispering. No, no, no. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. In that moment, all the fears I thought I had buried came roaring back. Loss. Pain. The very thing I had been running from. When we reached the hospital, the smell of antiseptic hit us like a wall. The bright lights felt cruel against the darkness of our panic. Nurses hurried past, voices sharp and urgent. We found her mother in the emergency ward, unconscious, doctors surrounding her. Aisha's breath broke into sobs. Ami, she cried, rushing forward, but a nurse gently held her back. We're doing everything we can, the doctor said firmly. Time became strange after that. Minutes felt like hours. The waiting room was cold, filled with the quiet suffering of strangers. Aisha sat hunched forward, her face buried in her hands. I didn't know what to do except sit beside her. And then, for the first time, she leaned into me completely, as if she couldn't hold herself up alone anymore. I can't lose her, she whispered, voice cracking. I can't. I wrapped my arms around her tightly, feeling her tremble. You're not alone, I said, my own voice shaking. I'm here. I'm right here. The words weren't just comfort. They were a promise. Hours later, the doctor finally came out. She had a mild stroke, he explained. We stabilized her, but the next few days are important. She'll need rest and care. Aisha exhaled a sob of relief, but fear still clung to her like shadow. We were allowed to see her briefly. Her mother looked smaller in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors surrounding her. Her eyes fluttered open when she heard Aisha's voice. My daughter, she whispered weakly. Aisha collapsed beside her, holding her hand like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I'm here, Ami, she cried. I'm here. Her mother's gaze shifted slowly to me. Even in weakness, her eyes carried that same steady strength. And then, in a voice barely above a breath, she said something that shattered me. Don't run away from them. I swallowed hard, tears stinging my eyes. I won't, I whispered. I promise. The days that followed were exhausting. We took turns at the hospital, barely sleeping, barely eating. Aisha was fragile, her emotions raw. Sometimes she would sit quietly, staring at nothing. Other times she would break down suddenly, sobbing in the hallway. And each time, I stayed. Not because I was strong, but because I finally understood. This was love. Not the romantic dinners or the laughter. Love was the hospital chair at 3 a.m. Love was holding someone's grief without trying to fix it. Love was choosing not to disappear when things became painful. One night, while Aisha slept with her head against my shoulder in the waiting room, her mother's words echoed in my mind. Don't run away. I realized then that all my avoidance, all my fear, had been selfish in a way. I had been so afraid of pain that I forgot pain is part of being human. And the people we love don't need us to be fearless. They need us to be present. A week later, her mother was discharged. The house changed again, but this time it wasn't distance that filled it. It was togetherness. We helped her walk, cooked meals softer for her recovery, sat with her in the evenings while she rested. One afternoon, I found her mother alone on the porch, the sunlight warming her face. She smiled faintly when she saw me. You stayed, she said. I sat beside her. Yes, I replied simply. She nodded slowly. That is what love is, she whispered. Not avoiding hurt, but sharing it. I felt my throat tighten. I was so afraid, I admitted. Afraid of becoming someone left behind. Her mother turned her head, her gaze gentle. Son, she said, being left behind is not the worst thing. I frowned, confused. The worst thing, she continued, is leaving before you have to. Running away from the people who still have you. Her words sank deep. That evening, Aisha sat beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not disappearing, she said, tears in her eyes. For staying, when it got hard. I kissed her forehead softly. I'm done running, I murmured. Outside, the sky was clear for the first time in days. And inside, something was clear too. Pain would always exist. Loss would always be possible. But love. Love was worth the risk. Because in the end, the strongest hearts aren't the ones that never break. They're the ones that stay, even when breaking feels inevitable. The weeks after her mother returned home were quieter, but not easy. Recovery is a strange thing. People think healing means going back to normal, but the truth is, you never really go back. You only move forward into something new. Her mother was still weak. Some mornings she struggled to hold her cup of tea steady. Some evenings she grew tired halfway through a conversation. And every small sign of fragility reminded Aisha of how close she had come to losing her. Fear became a silent guest in our home. Aisha tried to hide it, but I saw it in the way she hovered, in the way she checked her mother's breathing at night, in the way she startled at every cough. One night, I found her sitting alone in the kitchen, the lights dim, her shoulders shaking. Aisha, I whispered, stepping closer. She wiped her face quickly, forcing a weak smile. I'm fine. But we both knew she wasn't. I pulled out a chair and sat beside her. You don't have to be fine, I said softly. Not with me. Her breath hitched. I keep thinking, she began, voice trembling, what if it happens again? What if one day she's gone and I didn't do enough, didn't say enough? I reached for her hands, holding them tightly. You love her, I said. That's enough. And she knows it. Tears spilled freely now. I'm scared, she admitted. I feel like a little girl again, terrified of being alone. Those words broke something inside me, because I realized, this was the kind of pain I had spent my life running from. And now, the woman I loved was standing right in the middle of it. So I did the only thing I could. I stayed. I'm here, I whispered. And I'm not going anywhere. The next day, her mother asked to speak to both of us. We found her sitting in the living room, wrapped in a shawl, her face calmer than it had been in weeks. She gestured for us to sit. For a moment, she simply looked at us, her daughter and the man her daughter had chosen. Then she smiled faintly. You two remind me of something, she said. Aisha frowned. Of what, Ami? Her mother's gaze softened. Of your father and me, she replied. The room went still. Aisha's eyes filled immediately. I thought you were perfect, Aisha whispered. I thought your love was effortless. Her mother chuckled quietly, shaking her head. No love is effortless, she said. We fought. We misunderstood each other. There were days I thought we wouldn't make it. I stared, surprised. But we chose, she continued. Every day, we chose to come back to each other. Her voice grew firmer despite its weakness. That is what marriage is. Not a promise that you'll never hurt, but a promise that you'll never face the hurt alone. Aisha sobbed softly, leaning closer. Her mother reached out, brushing her daughter's cheek. And you, she said, turning her eyes to me, you have learned something many men never learn. I swallowed. What's that? She smiled. That love is not proven in comfort. Love is proven in staying. The word settled deep in my chest. That night, after her mother went to sleep, Aisha and I sat together on the porch. The air was cool, the sky scattered with stars. For a long time, we didn't speak. Then Aisha whispered, "Do you still hurt when you look at her?" I turned to her, surprised. I thought carefully. No, I said. But I understand now why I did. Aisha's eyes searched mine. Why? I exhaled slowly. Because she reminded me that love is fragile. That nothing lasts forever. And I was terrified. Aisha nodded, tears shining. But now, I continued, she reminds me of something else too. What? She reminds me that even when love ends, it was still worth it. And when love continues, it deserves everything we have. Aisha's lips trembled into a small smile. I don't want to waste time anymore, she whispered. Neither do I. In the months that followed, life didn't become perfect. Her mother regained strength slowly. Some days were good, some were difficult. Aisha and I still had moments of tension, moments where old habits tried to return. But now, we caught ourselves. We talked. We held each other. We chose each other. One evening, her mother sat with us at the dinner table, laughter filling the room for the first time in what felt like forever. She looked at me, her eyes warm. You're not avoiding me, she said softly. I smiled. No. And does it hurt to look at me now? I glanced at Aisha, then back at her. No, I said, voice steady. Now it feels like a reminder. A reminder of what? She asked. I leaned forward slightly. That love is worth the pain, I said. That family is worth the fear. That staying is the bravest thing a person can do. Her eyes shimmered, and she nodded slowly. That is the lesson, she whispered. Later that night, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching Aisha sleep peacefully. For the first time in a long time, my heart wasn't filled with dread of the future. It was filled with gratitude for the present. Because life will always carry loss. Love will always carry risk. But the greatest tragedy isn't heartbreak. The greatest tragedy is refusing to love fully because you're afraid of how much it might hurt. And as I finally closed my eyes, I understood something simple, something true. Looking at her mother no longer hurt. Because now I could see not the ending, but the strength of love that survives every storm.